All right, let's kick things off with the cuts that everybody thinks they want. You know, the big names, the steakhouse classics. But the real question is, are they actually the best use of your hard-earned money? So this slide hits two of the heavyweights, starting with the ribeye, and specifically the tomahawk. Look, it's an incredible steak, there is no doubt about that, but at upwards of, say, $38 a pound, a huge chunk of what you're paying for is that giant bone, which can literally be half the weight. It's a showstopper for sure, but not great value. And then you have the filet mignon. It's famous for one thing and one thing only, being the most tender cut. But all that tenderness, it comes at the cost of fat, marbling, and ultimately flavor. It is the most expensive cut, often topping $40 a pound, and you could argue it's the least flavorful. And the list keeps going with two more icons. The New York strip, it's a solid balanced steak, but that premium price tag really puts it in the overrated column when you see what else is out there. And the porterhouse, I mean, it looks amazing. You're getting two steaks in one, a filet and a strip. So what's the problem? Well, those two different muscles cook at totally different rates. The smaller filet is almost always overcooked by the time the bigger strip hits that perfect medium rare. So if the classics aren't the best value, what should you be buying instead? And that brings us to the most exciting part, right? These are the cuts that deliver unbelievable flavor and tenderness for just a fraction of the cost of their premium cousins. This, right here, is where you become a steak master. Okay, let's focus on two absolute champions here. First up, the flat iron. This is a total game changer. It comes from the shoulder, so it has this incredible beefy flavor, and get this, it is the second most tender cut on the entire animal, right behind the fillet. And it even stays tender if you cook it past medium rare. Next up is the hanger steak. This thing is insanely tender, super juicy, and you can sometimes find it for under $10 a pound. It is the ultimate budget-friendly powerhouse. And this quote, it just perfectly captures why the hanger is so special. It was known as the butcher's cut for a reason. The butchers knew how good it was and would literally keep it for themselves instead of putting it out for sale. That's the kind of insider secret we're talking about. Now let's look at three more incredible options. You've got picanha, the star of Brazilian steakhouses. It is all about that huge, glorious fat cap that just melts and bastes the meat while it cooks. Then there's the Denver steak. Just like the flat iron, it comes from the shoulder, which gives it this deep, beefy flavor that seriously rivals a ribeye when you slice it right. And finally, skirt steak. Its loose muscle fibers make it like a sponge for marinades. Think citrus and garlic for amazing fajitas, and it is just perfect for a lightning-fast, high-heat sear right on the grill. You know, just as important as knowing what to buy is knowing what to avoid. The round cuts, that's top, bottom, and especially eye of round, are extremely tough and they have very little flavor. Honestly, they're best for jerky and that's about it. And please, do not be fooled by the chuck tender. It's shaped like a filet mignon, but it is one of the toughest cuts you can possibly buy. The name is pure deception. Okay, so you know which cuts to look for. Now, how do you pick the perfect one from the counter? Well, it all comes down to these 5 simple rules. Here's the most crucial point. You have to trust your own judgment. First, use your eyes. A prime-grade steak with no marbling is way worse than a choice-grade steak that's just loaded with it. Second, talk to your butcher. Don't be shy. They're the experts, and they can almost always grab a better piece from the back. Third, be flexible and hunt for those sales. Your best steak is the one that looks fantastic and has a great price. Fourth, don't shy away from the frozen section. A properly frozen steak is just as good as fresh, seriously. And finally, if you are going to splurge on a dry-aged steak, make sure it's been aged for at least 30 days. That's where you get that unique concentrated flavor. All right, you've brought home the perfect steak. Now for what might be the single most important step in this entire process, seasoning. So let's talk about salt. This is completely non-negotiable. You must use kosher salt. The tiny grains of table salt, they just absorb way too quickly and make it super easy to over-salt your steak. But the large, coarse flakes of kosher salt, they stick to the surface, they help build a fantastic crust, and they let you see exactly how much you're applying for a perfect, even seasoning every single time. And now for a pro technique called dry brining. It sounds super fancy, but it's unbelievably simple. Just salt your steak generously with that kosher salt and then let it rest uncovered on a rack in the fridge overnight. This does 2 magical things. First, the salt works its way deep into the muscle, seasoning the steak from the inside out. And second, it pulls moisture to the surface, which then evaporates, leaving you with a perfectly dry exterior. And a dry surface, my friends, is the absolute key to getting a deep, brown, incredible crust. So we've picked it, we've seasoned it, now let's cook it. And the good news is, there's one simple rule that determines the perfect cooking method every single time. And that simple rule is thickness. For thick steaks, anything over an inch, your goal is an even edge-to-edge cook. The best way to achieve that is with indirect heat, using the reverse sear method. You cook it low and slow in, say, a 250-degree oven until it's about 125 degrees on the inside, then you give it a blistering hot sear right at the end. Now for thin steaks, anything under an inch, the goal is all about the crust. You need to cook them hot and fast using direct heat, like in a screaming hot cast iron pan or right over the coals, to get that crust before you overcook the inside. Simple as that. Oof, we have covered a lot of ground, so let's boil all of this down into your final go-to cheat sheet for absolute steak perfection. Here are the 4 things you just have to remember. Number 1, stop overpaying. Go explore those underrated cuts like hanger and flat iron for the best flavor per dollar. Number 2, be your own inspector. Judge a steak by its marbling, not its price or its grade. 3, always, and I mean always, dry brine overnight with kosher salt. It is the single biggest upgrade you can possibly make. And 4, thickness dictates your technique. Low and slow for thick, hot and fast for thin. So there you have it. You now have the butcher's secrets and the chef's techniques. You know how to find the hidden gems and how to cook them perfectly. So the only real question left is, which one are you going to try first?